Well, torture, for example, there in Guatemala, of course, they have the plastic bags that put over their heads, and they torture them until they're almost passed out, and then they take it off.
And what is it they want to get out of them?
Well, information, intelligence, or whatever, who else is involved, and so forth. And actually, they use the machetes a lot. And see, and that's the problem we're having. All those people are gangs. They're coming down to the U.S. like the MS. Malasalvatrucha gangs.
And gang,
they're from Salvador,
okay.
Honduras, and they bring the machetes, and a lot of the special forces guys I train in Central America are now working for the cartels as enforcers.
So you train people to
absolutely.
DEA, CIA, and now they're working for cartels.
Yes, sir.
So they have all that information, torture technique,
everything
So they tend to use that on who?
On their competition, whoever it is, or they come to the U.S. and they enforce. People that have been involved with the shipment of large quantities of drugs, and yes, that in that business, there's always people ripping off, and I'm talking about hundreds of kilos. I'm not talking about.
Like that plane we saw crash.
Exactly.
That's 4 tons, I think. Of
exactly,
cocaine.
and the shipment is big. I mean, you got to have a military to ship large quantities of drugs into the U.S. and. For example, Afghanistan. Who controls Afghanistan right now? The United States government. So we have the biggest, cheapest crop of heroin coming into this country now. And it's very well documented by government sources that, if we were serious about the war on drugs, then we would we'd spray the hell out of it. But we're not doing that. We're actually supporting the generals down there who run the cultivation fields.
And that is because
the United States government is allowing it to happen. Once again, we go back to the history of how our government has been complicit from the French Connection to...
the French Connection was drugs coming from the Golden Triangle in Burma, Vietnam, into Marseille, the port in France, being processed there and then being directed to the United States for distribution. And that was a collaboration between the French government, the United States government, and the mafias in both places.
Exactly. And when I was down in South America,
Here, take a quick sip of this. I don't have anything poisonous, but that'll help you for our run.
When I was in Vietnam, as a matter of fact, Mike Levine, another former DEA agent, was in Cambodia and Laos trying to stop the Burma shipping of heroin. And what happened there was that we also had the CIA involving drug trafficking, bringing heroin into the U.S. in body bags. So that was a big disaster that will show that our government was complicit. Once again.
Now that happened in the Vietnam War, of course. There were lots of soldiers came home with drugs.
1 out of 3 came back as
and that's CIA there, isn't it?
Yes, of course.
Now DEA, their mandate is worldwide
drug enforcement. And
what's their relationship with CIA, and how do they work together?
They work hand in hand. For example, when there's a third world country where, say, the U.S. government cuts off their funding because of human rights violation, like they did in Central America, well, then the DEA comes in, and in the pretext of the war on drugs, they'll funnel those funds into covert operations.
Wow.
So when the CIA can't do it openly, they use the DEA to do that.
So if people want to hear more about what you've got to say, are there videos online they can watch?
There's videos on my website. Like I've stated before, I've done Primetime Live, Dateline, Discovery, and American Drug War, and other...
Had anybody repudiate your credentials before?
Absolutely not. And the reason they don't do that is because I have the evidence. I have the pictures, I have the times and places, I have my journals.
And some of that's right here in the book?
And documents. I got a lot of government documents where they have admitted that they did wrong. And
but you're still alive.
Well, yeah, but I might be incarcerated too soon.
Yeah, no, you've got a charge by ATF,
yes.
Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Department of the U.S.
Yeah, they charged me back in March with buying some guns that I gave some guy some money to buy shotguns so we could sell at the gun show. And right off the bat, I told him, I'm not breaking the law. He says, yes, you are, yes, you are. Well, guess what? They dismissed the case October 1st.
Oh, they did?
Because
the other day?
Yes, the other day, because they knew what they were doing was illegal to me, and they knew they came back with Polk versus U.S. It's a law that says that if you're not a prohibited person, it's not against the law for you to buy guns. So, I was right from the very get-go. And
is that the extent of the harassment?
Well, no, they're trying to come back at me with now selling guns without a license, which half of the gun shows there.
Yeah, of course.
So, but I'm talking about, I got arrested with shotguns, Benelli shotguns that were used for hunting. But
don't all Americans have 5 or 10 of those each?
Exactly, and if you go to the gun show, half of the gun show still sells guns without a license. But what I did was I ran a sting operation on ATF on racial profiling at the gun shows. So when I did that with the local news, they kind of scrambled and they got pissed off at me. So, we're going to come back and get him somehow or another. And I've been warned for over 10, 15 years that they were going to get me one day, sooner or later, and they used that opportunity to get me.
Well, I'm glad to see you're alive and well in our studio. Now, we're going to conclude this episode, and then we're going to pick up in episode 2, and I'm going to ask you about some very specific things tell us stories about specific things you saw.
Sure.
But for now, I want to make sure everybody knows that this is Celerino Castillo, former DEA agent and author of Cocaine, Contras, and the Drug War. Powder Burns, your website is
powderburns.org.
And there's a lot of information you should look at. What is a person supposed to conclude, as my last question, when their government is involved in murder, torture, massive drug running?
Well, now what they do is people are listening, and it's because 1 out of 4 in the immediate family is being arrested by our government. Nonviolent offenders are going away to jail, and they're actually locking up this generation that we're bringing up. And a lot of them are being 1 out of 4 in the family. So that's going to tell you that it's hurting people now.
Well, I know there's 7 million Americans, either 2.2 million in jail, and the rest are on parole, probation, or bail. That's about 7 million people in total. It's a large amount of people to have circulating through the prison industrial complex.
And guess what, Mark? They can't vote.
They can't vote. Disenfranchise your voters.
Exactly.
It's kind of brilliant. That's Richard Nixon's legacy to us all.
There we go. There we go.
Well, listen, it's been great having you.
My pleasure. Yes, sir.
I'm fascinated with what you've told us. I'm amazed that such things go on, and I'm a worldly person, and I'm being sought by the DEA myself, as you know.
Yes,
but it's good to know that the people I'm dealing with are the worst kind of scumbags
yes, they are.
on the planet there.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you came over to the other side.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir.